Most aggressive decks I run end up wanting to take control of the board state for a very strong turn 2.
Hello and welcome to the Forgeborn Finishing School. Casey, Kid, and Core here. We'll be analyzing Forgeborn battles to help take your game to the next level.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode here with the holidays in full swing and some of the bigger events just around the corner. We have a fairly short but substantive episode, and we just want to start out with some news. So Stoneblade recently put out on their Discord server and in one of their live streams. If you haven't had a chance to go see it, we'll put a link to that video. I think it was on Twitch down below in the description, so please go check that out. But basically, the current director of organized play for Stoneblade, Alex Watkins, has accepted a position elsewhere and has moved on from that position. But they do come with some news, essentially saying, don't worry, Brian at Churchison, also, who's a Forge Guardian for the game, is going to be taking over as the director of organized play for Stoneblade, which is very, very big news for us. He's a prominent member of the community, one of the podcasters for the Charge Plated podcast, so has been in with this game since the very beginning, is very in tune, I would say, with the current happenings of the game, the current status, and so on and so forth. Also, he's from Minnesota, so I think that lets us know that he's probably a very, very intelligent, very empathetic, very professional person. Us Minnesotans tend to be just a little bit. Sorry about that. Just blowing some smoke there. And then they ended off by saying, "Hey, we'll be excited to announce some news in the future, but we just wanted to get this information out there that Church is going to be taking over." So, Greg, what are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, first I'd like to thank Alex for what he's contributed and brought in to the game. It was one of I have a lot of favorite experiences. One of my favorite though also was being at the end of the Denver Ultimate Championships. Hanging out with him and Nick, along with Church and Ryan.
Yeah.
We got some food and some beers and just getting his thoughts on the game and then where he wanted to take it, and a lot of that really kind of reinvigorated me back into the game with some of those things. So I would say that was a really really great moment in my experience with this game. And what I'm excited with Church is, Church was part of that conversation too, and we were all bouncing ideas back and forth off of each other. And so I think, having him in this role now, he can kind of take some of those things we've talked about in that conversation and the things that he's just talking about wanting to do, his community involvement in the game. We first podcast, right, for SFF, Charge Plated podcast. He's very involved, puts on tournaments, Forge Guardian. So I'm really looking forward to what he can do. And I think, once he works through, kind of understanding the bureaucracy of working in this role for SBE and all, because they have a lot of other games they also work on, right? So, and then working through with the marketing team, I'm really excited for what he's going to be able to bring to this. So yeah, I'm just excited. And like I said, I want to thank Alex for the time that he's put into it. Ryan, kick it back over to you and hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought up Denver, and Alex, because we had a lot of great moments with Alex. I remember down at Gen Con, he opened that freebie Lorcana pack someone gave him, pulled an Enchanted Mickey, and none of us were big Lorcana fans, but we're still like, whoa, that's really cool. Those are fun things. I played X-Wing back when he worked for Fantasy Flight Games, so I've had a little bit of history with him, and I really enjoyed meeting him at Denver, and I wish him the best of luck in everything he has going forward, and I really am thankful for what he's done. I've said it many, many times. The framework for organized play that was built for Solforge Fusion is a framework that can take this game to the absolute heights of player base. So it was built with intent and with love, and I appreciate everything that he's done. And again, yeah, wish him the best of luck moving forward. As you said with Church, it's the passion that he has for the game that I'm the most excited about. And it did come out in that Denver conversation where Nick Fletcher, Alex Watkins, Church, you, myself, we're just sitting there bouncing ideas off, like you said, and you could just feel everyone's passion for the game and where it could go, and the possibilities, the amount of different play formats I think that came out of that conversation as potentials was just still exciting to me today that we have not yet kind of brought some of those out, and that it is still potential. And then the other thing, I kind of just want to go over like what I would think of expectations. I've gone through a couple games where they've retooled from a 1.0 to a 2.0, or you've had a big change like a director of organized play, or a huge design shift in a game, things like that. With those expectations, I think it's, even without the holiday season, it's incumbent upon us as a player base, as a community, to have a little bit of patience. I would say a 30-day minimum is what it would take a smart person to come in and absorb what's happening in the community, learn their role within the community before making those kinds of changes that oftentimes end up having to get undone because they were done too quickly without the foresight of knowing the full picture. So I would ask that we as a player base give Church time to absorb the full responsibilities of his new role and understand the parameters, of course. And then like our expectations, even though maybe he's got that in 30 days, 3 to 6 months, I think is a realistic time frame where we start to maybe see some things come out where, hey, those are things that maybe he's had a hand in implementing, or those are some of the new changes. Or if it happens in that 3 to 6 month time frame, hey, this might be indicators of the new kind of path of Stoneblade's OP, right? So just kind of everyone, let's settle in, and we're already settling, waiting for the last winner. That is going to come out in, I think, February. So let's just kind of, February, March timeframe, let's just kind of get prepared for that and just get really excited where this comes. I do know one thing that I've already heard come out is that he is very cognizant of the timelines that he wants to give to people to make it to organized play events. So really what that means is increasing the communication level out to the players of where we can get events. We see it in the Discord all the time, people asking about, hey, are you guys going to be at PAX? Hey, are you guys going to be at Origins? Just know that, I've already seen it in communication from him that's on his radar as something to try to influence. And so, that being the first thing that I heard come out, it made me very happy. That 100%, when it came to Gen Con, we were looking at getting accommodations, and we ended up kind of far away for a kind of hefty price because we didn't, weren't able to make accommodations sooner, and that's a little bit on us too. But so that's something I'm very excited for. The only last thing that I guess I kind of want to say is that in these types of big changes, it takes two parties to kind of be what's the word,
in alignment or working together?
In alignment, cooperation. And so I really just, I appreciative and thankful for Stoneblade to give a member of the community this position who has the capacity, capability. And then I'm just asking that, it would be really awesome if they have the courage to allow him to do his, job, which I think they will, right? That's why they hired him. And I think that's really cool. And I'm just excited for the future of this game, with Church here helming the organized play. So any last minute thoughts on that as we go forward here?
No, and I think I echo a lot of what you say on there, and it's gonna take a partnership between Church and the community, and not only in the community, you have different sectors of the community, whether they're competitive or sealed or just your more like casual players, right? And then he's gonna also balance that with SBE needs and their expectations, right? So there's a lot of parties, and he's gonna have to try to find a balance, and I think Church can do that. But we all need to kind of also understand that as well,
the guy that we've sat across the table from before, and we had his ear. I think we'll still have that ear, but what you're saying is, don't expect anything that you say to just happen, right? He's working within a company, and he has the company's best interests at heart. And if I know anything about Church, he's going to do what is best for the company, and that's what is best for us as a player base, right? To continue the longevity of the game, it has to be the best for Stoneblade. So all great points. We'll call it not a cooperation between two, but a triumvirate, right? The community, and Stoneblade. So yeah, it is just two.
It's two, but looking at it from Church's perspective, you kind of he's
the new
he
one
himself has two things. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. So that was some really exciting news we had. Again, I do want to end that little segment with wish Alex the best of luck. I'm excited for anything he goes into, and I'm excited to find out what that is, and go try out the game that he's supporting, or his endeavor. So wished him the absolute best of luck. So now we're going to get into a different substantive topic here, Greg. This is one that, I think we always end up with as players, especially competitive players, across the table from each other, and we end up talking about, but no one ever really sets it down on the table what their firm belief is in this topic. And so we're going to throw out our opinions here, and right, wrong, or indifferent, obviously. That's what we do here.
I think people put their firm stance on this.
Oh, okay.
In this. So,
I guess I've seen some people put it down in the chat, but then I've also seen them kind of change and morph, as opinions will do.
Yep.
But yeah. So to forge or not to forge, that's what we're gonna call this. Is it more advantageous to start with the forge in this game, or start without the forge? And then the tertiary effect is, does that differ based on your style of deck or deck archetype, Greg?
Yeah, so this is one I guess you're gonna call me on the fence on, I guess. I think what SBE has done with Solforge Fusion is actually this is probably one of the very few games that I feel comfortable being on Forge or off Forge, even if my deck doesn't necessarily want that. I don't think there is a massive advantage compared to, say, Magic or Pokemon, depending on which phase of the turn you're going to go. And L5R, it was a big indicator as well. I don't think that the margin of victory sways necessarily hugely in any direction. Now, there are going to be some decks that prefer it, right? You could say a Krogius deck prefers being off Forge or on Forge, basically being on Forge on cycle 1, so that it has 2 turns in cycle 3 to drop it in an attack.
Mm-hmm.
But I also say I don't think that's that big of a concern. In a lot of cases, I guess I am going to go on to I would prefer to be off Forge first turn. I guess if I'm going to put my foot on a side of a fence, I'm going to put off Forge in just about most or every deck, because I'm able to answer the first Forge cycle and get a leg up, and then push the advantage. And then at that point, if I'm pushing that advantage, it doesn't necessarily matter if I drop the Krogius off cycle. You're still not killing it. And by cycle 3, I hope to have you down around 20 to 30 hit points anyway. So if I drop it off Forge cycle 3, turn 1, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. And a lot of the decks that I prefer playing, I prefer being off Forge cycle 1, because in cycle 3, where you tend to be I'm trying to win end of cycle 2, cycle 3, turn 1, in my main deck, right? And that's keyed off a lot of times of me being off Forge, so I could interact on my opponent's bench without them having an answer. So in cycle 3, I get 2 of those phases where I can go, I have a big dude here, and now I just clear out whatever's there in the chuff and then just hit you in the face. So, but this is a game where I think it works. They did it well.
Yeah. Well, I think what I just got out of your last kind of topic there, or pathway of consciousness, was that Dark Forge Drain decks potentially would like to be off Forge, to have that interaction or that interactability. But really, to me, that says, hey, probably in cycle 2, where you're swinging your hardest, you probably want to be off Forge twice. So that means you're on Forge in turn 1. But then look at this. So you end up down this spiral of conversation that talks about this, and then you say, well, I mean, I have a lot of advantage either way. So that's what you're saying is like, I think I can react either way, and Stoneblade has made a pretty good game in that it doesn't offer a distinct advantage.
Exactly. And even in my main Krogius decks, a lot of times I prefer to be off Forge first turn because I can set the tempo.
Here's what I would say to that. I just think that we are a small enough community that we aren't measuring percentages the same way typical TCGs would measure percentages.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there is a point where the Forge gives you a 5 to 10%, which even in other TCGs, that's a pretty big number. But let's get down to the 5%. I think that's a hard thing to notice in our small amount of games, small player base, small community. But I do think it's distinct. What I guess I think I've noticed is that I am fairly confident in saying that your typical aggressive deck wants to be off Forge in Cycle 1. And I think some people might find that counterintuitive, but here's my thought process for that. Most aggressive decks I run end up wanting to take control of the board state for a very strong turn 2. And when you're off Forge on turn 1, that allows you to do that. You can answer one of their creatures with a spell or removal or something, set up some nice trades, and then you are set up for a very strong turn 2. In an aggressive deck, once you take the board state, you often never relinquish it until you win the game. So I think a very good aggressive deck wants to be off Forge so that they can grab the board state as fast as they can and go from there. I also, you mentioned that some people believe Krogius on Forge is the advantageous play. I do believe that truly, and I only believe that because of the invention of Rumble Spark. Before, I thought it was really a thing, but I don't think there was a reason that it had to be a thing. Then Rumble Spark was made, and you ended up in the Krogius versus Rumble Spark decks where it really became a thing where that game might end Cycle 3, Turn 1 on the dot, or Turn 2. And you needed to ensure that you had the Forge on turn 1 to stop them from getting that extra aggressive attack there, and to ensure that you had the chance to draw Krogius at the right time and seal the game out. So, interesting discussion. I really enjoy kind of going down that spiral I mentioned. With the Dark Force Drain, you talked about how it's like, oh, that makes sense. I have a really big creature in front, or any creature in front that I can make big, and it doesn't take an action because it's my Forgeborn ability. So I really want the ability to affect my opponent's side of the board off Forge twice in deck cycle 2. That makes sense to me. In Dark Forge Drain decks, I would say the deck archetype would prefer then to be on Forge in cycle 1.
But I don't want to be on Forge cycle 1 with my Dark Forge Drain deck. I want to be off Forge. And again, because the deck is so reliant on, and again, I would say that a control deck, you can say aggressive deck wants to be off Forge, right? And I agree with you. Again, I'm in a similar vein with you. I would say a control deck also wants to be off Forge cycle 1 so they can control the board state. And that's what my deck tries to do, is it tries to control the board state to set up scenarios throughout the entire game.
Yeah.
And so I feel the advantage is off Forge. Like there are a lot more games even when I'm playing sealed or just random decks, there are a lot more games where I go, man, I wish I was off Forge when I was on Forge than I am when I go, man, I'm off Forge and I wish I was on Forge with this hand. And I think that's the next nature of the 5-card draw, and you're only going to play 2 of them, and you're always going to have some control elements. That first turn is always important of gaining board control. And so
it sounds like we're at the same place. We both agree that off Forge turn 1 is probably the optimal play. I'm a little different where I say now Krogius I think needs to be on Forge.
Against RSE, I agree with that. Like if you're going against an RSE deck, your Krogius is going to be you're going to increase your win percentage by probably a pretty decent percentage, just based on how you're only seeing 25%, you're seeing 25 and then 33 and then 50%, right? Having that come in earlier against an RSC deck is vastly more important. than it is against if you're playing a Krogius deck, which tends to be purple green. You're controlling the board, you're gaining life, right? Whether it shows up on either turn, and the end game isn't as impactful as you controlling the board in the first cycle, which I think is more important. And so, yeah, that I can see. That I can see. Yeah, you could be on there. And again, outside of that, I'm generally wanting to control the board state more than guaranteeing that I have one in turn 1 and turn 3 to drop Krogius.
So if we could summarize, I think, tell me if I'm going to say what I believe we both believe, and you're going to tell me if this is true or not. It is generally more advantageous to start without the Forge. However, based on deck archetype or deck matchup, there are a few instances where being on Forge is, of course, valuable.
Yes, I agree with that. I don't think it is as impactful, though, as turn designation in any other CCG. I think they've done a really good balancing it, that even though you get an advantage, it's not like first turn Magic, right? Or
I think I'll agree with you, but I will also say that this is a point where I'm going to go out on a limb and just say, I'll end up disagreeing with you. I think you're probably right, but I don't think we have the data to know. And I do think it is very advantageous, but the problem with Magic is, like, or Pocket Monsters or Lorcana, it is huge to go first. It is huge. I think it could be. We just don't know yet. My instincts tell me it is probably just as important. But the problem is we can't know that also, not just because of the smaller data set, but because of the built-in variance that Solforge has over those other games. We'll probably never know the full impact because the variance is so much higher than in Magic or Lorcana or Pocket Monsters. Because you miss 25% of your deck in any given rotation. And there are some cards within those 25% that are no longer relevant after cycle 1, if you didn't level them up. So
yeah, and you're not going to necessarily get to a lot of that data when you're not doing best 2 out of 3, right? You're not going to be able to make the active choice to go off Forge or on Forge without best 2 out of 3. It's going to be random at this point, so it gets even harder to get that data effectively because of the variance you just described.
Yep. So I guess if there's anything that we can just end this episode with, and someone could take a piece of information, if best 2 out of 3 becomes a thing, and you're a new player, and you are able to choose based off of the win-loss of the first round, it is generally more advantageous to start off Forge and Solforge Fusion. Not always, but generally.
But for those listening that grossly disagree with our interpretation of on Forge and off Forge, let us know in the comments. And let us know what we're missing, or what your thoughts on it. That why you think on Forge is, so that newer players can look at it and get different sides of that coin and a different perspective.
Yeah, I'd be curious. Not even if you disagree with us. If you agree with us, I would love to see just all the comments on this one. To be honest, just kind of like a toll, like just a Forge or on Forge or on Forge. Just drop it in the comments, please. And then expand if you would like to, of course. But yeah, start it off with on Forge or off Forge. And then, yeah, I think that's all we have for tonight. Quick, nice short episode before the holidays. Wish everyone a happy holidays. Stay safe out there, please. And then the last thing I want to say is, like, this is a YouTube thing. I think you're supposed to get, like, likes on videos. I don't care for, like, the YouTube thing, but, like, I like seeing the thumbs up. I think that's pretty cool. So if you did like it, please throw one out there. I noticed we have, like, some videos with, like, 15, and I should probably be smarter. I should figure this stuff out, Greg. But then we'll get one with, like, 1 or 2. And so I'm hyper-analyzing those videos as to see what we did or what we didn't do. But, hey, if you like it, throw a thumbs up on it. I do look at those things, and I appreciate it.
Comment, like, subscribe. And spoiler for next episode.
So,
yeah.
Greg and I each got a package in the mail here, and Greg is kind enough. He's driving up here for the holidays. We are going to try that episode in person. We're going to open these. These are the prizes across multiple Ultimate Championships, League of Champions events, all sorts of organized play for Stoneblade, where we just, for one reason or another, the prizes weren't available at the time we were there. And so they've been mailed out to players. And so we're going to open our packages, hopefully live, on stream together, and put that out just so you guys can appreciate, kind of like some pack opening. We've never really done that on the episode here. You'll see if we get some good decks, if we get something spicy, if we don't. That'd be another fun thing in the comment below. Who's going to get the better half deck, Greg or Ryan here. I have a feeling we'll both get a mat that looks similar, but the deck's where the fun will come in, I'm sure. So, I think that's all we have, Greg.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for attending this lesson of the Forgeborn Finishing School. If you liked this video, please subscribe, comment, or consider donating to our Patreon account. We look forward to our next lesson.